Lazio wins against La Spezia, but is it all good? Ciro and Correa are not scoring again. Do we have to start worrying about it? Pereira finally started. We will review his performance, obviously. Caicedo time in Verona, red card and penalty. We will review the ref. Lazio say goodbye to Guerini. Another tragedy hits the Primavera. Radu, the record man. Is Inzaghi staying? And most of all, why I'm spending Pasquetta with Alasdair? This is Lazio Lounge, your favorite Lazio podcast, with Vittorio Campanile and the other guy, Alasdair McKenzie. Let's start from La Spezia. Lazio won, and this is the third victory in the last 3 matches. So we should be happy. But I don't know. I feel Lazio is struggling really a lot in this last couple of matches, right?
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of, kind of during the best points of last season when Lazio went on that huge winning run. There was, well, at that point we were talking about how they kept finding different ways to win games, and it was generally a kind of big selection of ways that they win games. There would be late wins or dominant wins or whatever, or just this ability to kind of grind out results when they weren't playing well. But it's a bit strange when the only way that Lazio seem to be winning games is grinding out wins when they're not playing well. And I think a big part of it for me, like I said on Twitter after the game, is that I think because there's 8 home wins in a row now, which is an amazing run, but because the last 5 have all been by 1-goal margins against teams that you'd expect to beat more comfortably, it kind of takes the shine off it a little bit. So I don't think we can complain too much because they are still winning the games, but it does feel like they still have at least kind of 2 or 3 more gears to go into.
I thought we are struggling in the midfield. We are quite slow. Spezia, Crotone, they all had the time to recover and position their men when defending against Lazio. While last year, for example, or when Lazio was playing great football, we were very fast to counterattack, find spaces and things like that. So I think this is something that I don't understand because against Spezia, Luis Alberto didn't start, but he played against Crotone Udinese and Lazio was still struggling.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think there is one answer to this question apart from potentially the simple fact that these kind of unconvincing wins have coincided with Immobile stopping scoring. And I don't know, do you think it's too reductive to say that? It's just if Immobile was putting away the chances he gets, Lazio would be winning these games by 2 or 3 goals instead of by 1 goal. And when he stopped scoring, I know Correa was to blame as well in the game on Saturday, but we've got so used to Ciro playing at a certain level that when he stops playing at that level, I think the cracks in the rest of the team appear a bit more.
Yes, definitely. This team was probably built around Ciro, and the fact that he didn't score in the last 7 matches or so, it's definitely a problem for Lazio, especially because Tucu Correa missed again good chances. I think one in the first half and the second one where he had Acerbi all alone in front of the goal without goalkeeper, and instead of passing the ball, he shot and hit the goalkeeper. Those was two chances that could put in bed the match. Lazio could have been winning it that easily. You go 2-0 ahead, it's pretty much over. And instead, we struggle. And then the other problem, Alasdair, is scoring against Lazio is becoming too easy. Now, Verde did an unbelievable goal, but every time the other team has a chance, they score.
I was going to say, if you think that Verde's goal was easy, I would love to play some five-a-side with you and see what you're like. No, you're right. I mean, I think if you're struggling to score goals of your own, obviously then the importance of keeping a clean sheet becomes paramount. And but yeah, I mean, look, there's nothing you can do really about something like that. I mean, obviously you can try and intercept a cross, you can try and be the first to win that kind of ball before it falls to that height in the area, but it was such a one-off, and you just have to applaud it. Really, I mean, it's an unbelievable goal. I think it's the best goal I've seen this season, and there's not much. It becomes a bit frustrating if you end up losing points because of a goal like that, because it seems so unlikely that anything like that will ever happen again. So it's a shame when it happens against you.
We're going to talk about the ref later, but do you think that was a foul on Marusic?
I'm not convinced. You mean the Jazzy one?
Yeah, the one that brought to the Spezia goal.
Not for me. I think that if we start disallowing goals for stuff like that, the whole game's going to fall apart, to be honest.
Well, you come from a very physical football, right? The Scottish one. So I can understand that for you it's very different. Yeah, honestly, at first, when I saw it first, I thought, wow, this is a free kick, obvious. I thought they would go to the VAR and cancel it. But then seeing the replay, it was a little bit too soft. Marusic went down too easily, I think. So, yeah. But we're going to talk about the ref later. Alistair, do you think this was the last chance for Correa? He's not going to play next match because he received a red card. But, you know, he had Crotone, Udinese, Lo Spezia. I mean, we're not talking about Real Madrid defense or Bayern Munich. These were matches where he had chances, big chances, and he missed again. If you're fighting for the Champions League, you have to have a striker that when he has the chance, he scores. And Correa, it's keeping missing big chances. Do you think this is his last chance? Because this year he started a lot of matches.
Well, I'd say a couple of things on that. First of all, I don't think it's his last chance simply because the other options aren't exactly prolific either. Caicedo's great, but only in the last 10 minutes. And Murici, well, he's not exactly been tearing up trees, has he? But more importantly, I'd say is the second point, which for me is that it seems to have become popular to criticise Correa now recently as a result of Immobile stopping scoring and there being more pressure on him. But I don't think we've really learned anything different than what we already knew. I mean, Correa's been like this the whole time he's been at Lazio. He's never been a prolific goal scorer. What he's always been good at is the other elements of his game which complement whoever he's playing with up front. Let's not forget that he was signed as a winger. He's not a natural striker. It's a position that he's been kind of retrained into since he joined Lazio. And that's not an excuse because I still think his finishing and his composure should be better. But I don't think that there's anything that's happened for me in the last few games that makes me say, okay, now's the time that we give up on Correa, because it's always been like this, really.
A question: how can Caicedo score in the first 10 minutes of the match if he never starts? I never saw a player scoring from the bench.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. And I think Caicedo is the player who's putting most pressure on him. But you know, we have seen that when Caicedo starts, he struggles to make the same kind of impact that he does off the bench. And almost by this stage, his record off the bench and late in games is so ridiculous that, I mean, how often this happens, that it almost gives the rest of the team a lift, I feel like. By this point, if the team needs a goal and they see Caicedo coming on, they're all starting to think, well, okay, Zona Caicedo is about 5 minutes away, so we'll get there, and maybe relaxes them a little bit. So, look, I love Caicedo. I think he's a really useful squad player, but I think when it comes down to the answer of having someone who's going to regularly, reliably score goals for you, I don't think starting Caicedo is the answer to that problem.
Okay, before moving to Pereira, before playing, would you be happy if someone told you, okay, you're going to win against Crotone and Lo Spezia, but only thanks to a late goal of Caicedo?
Probably not. Probably not, let's be honest. I was worried about the Spezia game. I don't know about you. I mean, they're a better team than perhaps they get credit for, and I did expect them to cause problems. But yeah, it's closer than it should have been. Again, at least I think this time what we saw was a reaction in the second half. I thought the first half performance was so poor, and they came in at the break with I think 2 shots on goal and 0 on target, despite having hundreds of passes and better possession and all that. So I think they really struggled without Alberto, and I think, to be honest, it said a lot that Inzaghi brought on Alberto despite the fact that he was still injured. And after the game, he posted a picture of his ankle that looked like a balloon instead of an ankle. It's quite hard to see where his ankle was supposed to be. So we kind of needed him on the pitch to make that happen.
Let's move to Pereira, who finally started. This was just the 3rd start in Serie A for Andreas Pereira. I was really looking forward to see what he can do, because every time he came in, he was producing something. I have to say that he did a trick that was amazing, but overall his performance wasn't what I was expecting, Alistair. I don't know if you have a different point of view on this.
No, unfortunately not, as much as I like disagreeing with you. It was when I did the post-match video for our Patreon page. It was one of the first things I talked about. Really was that we've been calling for that for so long, haven't we? Saying the performances he's had from the bench are encouraging enough that I feel like he should get a chance in that role. That's the role that he was brought in last summer to provide. Really, was being the backup to Alberto when he's not fit, and it's amazing it's taken as long as this for him to really get that opportunity in that midfield position. And yeah, for me, I just think didn't influence the game nearly enough. And it was strange because you felt like there was enough space on the pitch for him to be able to do it. The opposition were at a level that he should be able to do it. And we've seen him do it when he comes off the bench and he's really motivated and fired up. So yeah, it was disappointing. I mean, the piece of skill, though, that you mentioned, do you not think that kind of shows, again, this guy's got a lot of ability, doesn't he? It's just we need to find a way of getting him to be more decisive.
I think probably for playing in that position in Serie A, he has to have more continuity. While if he plays like trequartista or second striker, you can have those flashes and then disappear for 10, 15 minutes. I think probably he's more suited for that position in Italy rather than playing as Luis Alberto, because when you play as Luis Alberto, you have to touch the ball more time, be 90 minutes focused, not just 10 and then disappeared, etc. So maybe for Serie A football, he's not good enough for that position. He's not ready for that position. He's more playing as Tucu Correa maybe in that type of position. One thing is, when he came out, Lazio played better. I thought that was more because of Lulic coming off. I thought Lulic was terrible. And when Fares came in without doing anything particular, Lazio started playing better, because finally Lazio was with 11 men instead of 10. So I don't think that Pereira came off and Lazio played better. Simply, Lazio started playing with 11 men, and obviously that's an advantage.
Yeah, it does help. Yeah, I mean, I did feel to a certain extent. I mean, you mentioned that he's better suited to a trequartista role, and he has obviously played further up the pitch quite a lot with Lazio. But I did feel like he was a bit unfamiliar with what he was being asked to do almost in the Alberto position, because we know now that Alberto, he's being asked to drop deep, collect the ball off the defence and, launch those long vertical passes and be the kind of quarterback in the team at times, as well as getting forward to get his shots from the edge of the box and so on. And I feel like Pereira wasn't totally, I just got the sense that he was a bit uncertain about exactly where he should be when, and he would almost kind of remember to go back and collect the ball sometimes, but other times he wouldn't be there at all. And I didn't feel like the balance with him and Milinkovic in midfield was as good as it is, obviously, between Alberto and Milinkovic now, because they've been playing together for so long by now that it's almost they can do it with their eyes shut.
Do you think he should be having a chance maybe against Verona to play near Ciro Immobile or the first striker against Verona, or do you think this is it?
Possibly, but I mean, we've seen before that Inzaghi's kind of reserve striker partnership is Pereira and Murici. So I find it hard to believe that he's going to start Pereira up front for a game that big. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty concerned about this Verona game. Ever since Juric took the Verona job, he's basically had the better of Inzaghi every time we played. Lost to them already this season. Can only draw 0-0 with them in the middle of our winning run last year. They're a really difficult team, so I think no matter what, I can't really imagine Inzaghi doing anything other than playing Immobile and probably Caicedo after yet another example of why he deserves to play.
And the red card of Lazzari will be a big problem for Lazio playing against Verona. He's going to miss that match. Probably he's going to be missing the next two. And with Marusic playing again central defender, I'm wondering, will he move back to his normal position? And maybe we're going to see Musacchio or Patrick starting there? Or do you think Lulic will move on the other side and Fares will start on the left? Because, against Verona, it's you have to play your best team to have a chance to win.
Wait, is there a guy in our squad called Musacchio?
For the moment, I'm not sure, because if Luis Felipe comes back, I think he's going out.
Yeah, I mean, I find the ending to that game, the complete head loss of getting two players sent off in stoppage time, I find that just unbelievably frustrating. Both red cards, completely avoidable. And yeah, like you say, Lazzari has been one of Lazio's better players recently. I think he's been in really good form. I think Marusic has to, obviously he has to play there. Please don't move Lulic to the right and put Fares on the left. I'd be quite happy to see Fares and Marusic start, to be honest, and then it's up to Marusic, in my mind, to put in a big performance to remind Inzaghi, this is what I'm actually good at, and this is what I was doing really well before you moved me to centre back. Because Marusic was one of Lazio's most informed players at wing back before he got moved. So I think he needs a big game there, in my mind, to convince Inzaghi to at least put him back on the left wing.
You mentioned the red card. Let's go a little bit and talk about the penalties, because some fans wrote that there was a clear penalty for Spezia, the handball of Acerbi. Another says that the Lazio penalty wasn't a penalty. I'm curious to hear what you think about those two episodes.
The Acerbi one, I can't remember off the top of my head, so I'll let you handle that one. But the Lazio one is a classic example, I think, of exactly the kind of thing that shouldn't be a penalty, but it is in the current rules. And there's nothing we can really do about that. We got very lucky with it, but if your arm's in that kind of position and he's not looking at the ball, he has no idea what's going on. I didn't see anything when they first stopped. I had no idea that a VAR review was even coming. But those are the rules at the moment. I mean, I know it's complicated because the rules keep changing, but at the moment that's a penalty.
Yeah, I agree. And you cannot stand like that in a penalty box, especially when there is a corner. You know the ball is coming. So he's trying to make more space to avoid the ball to go through. So for me, that's a clear penalty. The Acerbi one is when he's sliding and on the left side and the ball hits his hand. But as we know, the rules of the handball changed. And when you're sliding and your hand is on the ground, that's considered part of your body. So it's not a penalty. But a lot of people wrote me saying, Lazio robbed again. That was a clear penalty for Spezia. Honestly, I don't think so. So I think the Lazio's penalty was obvious a penalty. So moving to the red cards, I thought the ref was a little bit during the match. Spezia player made a lot of hard tackles. I know you are Scottish, so you're used to that, but in Italy, usually you get a lot of yellow cards for that. So my impression is that Lazzari was really upset because just 5 minutes ago, he had another terrible tackle and no one got a yellow card. So that's another bad tackle. I thought the refs should have sent off the Spezia player, but you're at what, 90 minutes? You're winning, you're fighting. You should have stayed down for 5 minutes, crying, etc., instead of get up and pushing the players and getting one of the most stupid red cards.
Yeah, and look, I understand how these things can end up happening. You know, it's an emotional sport. It's a passionate game, and it's at that part of the game where tensions were very high because they're trying to hold on. But yeah, I just think you need to keep your cool, or you need to at least have someone there to stop you from losing it. Somebody there to drag you away, especially given that this all happened on the touchline. I just feel like there was opportunity for one of his teammates to grab him and stop him before he did anything. It just it's pointless. And yeah, look, I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on Lazio because you can see how it ends up happening. It was a horrible challenge, like you said. I can understand why he's angry about it, and he's not really done anything. It's the classic kind of footballer's red card, where as soon as you square up to someone, they go falling down like they've just been smashed in the face by Anthony Joshua. So it's it's a bit frustrating, but as was Correa's one. Again, just in that part of the pitch at that point in the game, it was a bit too reckless.
Yeah, I don't know even if Correa touches the player, but that's another avoidable yellow card that, luckily Spezia didn't create any chances in the last 5 minutes, but with 2 men down, that's a big risk. And again, as you mentioned before, we are playing against Verona, one of the most informed team in the league now, without two starting players. People can can say that Correa is not helping the team, so it's better without him. But you take off option from Simone Inzaghi, so that's obviously a big problem. Alistair, we have to unfortunately talk about Daniel Guerini because another tragedy hits the Lazio Primavera. The Lazio player died last week in a car accident, and yes, simply tragic. It's unfortunately Primavera already lost Mirko Fersini a couple of years ago, and this is the second time that happens something to Lazio like that. Losing life at 19 years old is simply something that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, it was really horrible news. Like you say, in a car accident, and yeah, the kind of videos of the funeral with thousands of Lazio fans there, sending him off really and singing songs and so on. It was very moving, and yeah, I mean, what can you say? Been thinking about it quite a lot since it happened, really, but yeah, just awful thing to happen. Really sad.
Yeah, can I say something? Lazio Primavera played again just a couple of days after the funeral, and obviously they have been destroyed by Sampdoria. It's normal that those players were still emotional, and it's hard to play a match, very important match, because Lazio is fighting for relegation after what just happened. So yeah, I didn't think it was a nice move from the federation to not postpone this match. I don't know.
Yeah, and it clearly of course it affected these guys. I mean, they're these players, most of them, they're not professionals yet. They've not made it in football. They're basically kind of kids who enjoy playing football together. And if you follow some of these kids on Instagram and so on, they're all posting tributes to him, and they've all been visiting the spot where he died to lay down flowers and and all that. I mean, it's clearly, especially at that stage of life, to lose a close friend is, I can only imagine how the horrible thing that is. So, yeah, like you say, it's asking a lot, I think, of kids at that age to have to then go and try and do their job without it. Yeah, you're right.
Moving to something more nicer, Radu, finally, record man. I mean, who could have expected 13 years ago that Stefan Radu would come to Lazio and beat all the records? A lot of managers have changed. Still, he's always starting there. And with Simone Inzaghi, he looks a completely different player, even younger than he really is, and playing probably his best football. Right?
Yeah, I mean, when we touched on how amazing this story really is in the last podcast when he equaled the record, but yeah, for a guy who's come over from Romania, obviously at a young age, but to stick around for as long as he has, through as many coaches as he has and as many tactical systems and all the rest of it, being played in various positions. He's had loads of injury problems over the years as well, so to reach that number of appearances despite those physical issues on top of everything, I mean, it really is, he's such a part of the furniture now at Lazio that people have almost taken this for granted. It's kind of like, oh, of course he's the record appearance holder because he's always there, but there were no guarantees that he should still be there. And for him, when he arrived, Lazio were not exactly in a particularly good position around then. And for him to then, join the team at that state of its history and end up being a starting key player for the team 13 years later in the Champions League group stage, knockout stage, is incredible, really.
About people always being there, let's talk about Simone Inzaghi, because in the press conference before the match, he said that his plan is to stay with Lazio. He knows Lotito's priority is to keep him. They're going to discuss. They're going to find an agreement. He's always very positive. But then why are they not signing this agreement?
Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, I guess it's good to hear those messages being repeated again after a week in which we've had to, read and listen to all these sorts of new reports about the fact that he's leaving the club, which we've heard a lot of in the past. Yeah, I feel like I think before the international break said I felt like it had to happen during the international break if it's going to happen at all. We've had those 10 days, still no news. That for me is a big concern. I don't know what the hold-up can be other than negotiations over his salary. And he's within his right to ask for a pay rise considering what he's done. But I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure I feel confident he's going to be there next season at this rate.
So the latest rumors I heard is that he asked Lotito to join Lazio Lounge, but Lotito doesn't want him, so they're not signing the new deal for that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to join us, right? But
I mean, the good thing about joining Lazio Lounge is you do end up with €2.5 million a year. So
don't say it. About €2 million a year. Remember that you can support our podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/LazioLounge. And we have a question. Davide, our Patreon, is writing us saying really should have scored again to close this match. And we talked about it. He's not sure that Lazzari was a red card. We talked about it. I thought it was a silly move from Lazzari. I mean, in Italy, in Serie A, we have a lot of example of players getting a foul in the last minute of the match and staying down for like 3 hours and then the referee whistle. Instead, he jumped in and went and pushed the guy. I'm sorry. I love Lazzari. I thought he's one of the best players this season. But that was a stupid move, Alistair. I don't know if you agree with me. And obviously, scoring more. It's not easy when your top strikers forgot to score.
Yeah, and it comes after a game where Lazio's got a goal, and that's a part of his game that he's not really provided much of since getting to the club. And I think it was a reward of his improved recent performances where we've seen him really be a big attacking threat, I would say, in recent games, and even in the Bayern Munich matches in the Champions League as well. So for him to get a goal, I think is good reward for that improvement, and it's frustrating to lose him for such a needless task. And on top of that, against Verona, who play a similar system of 3-4-2-1, I suppose. But it's going to be important, who comes out on top in the wing-back battle, because with Faraoni and Lazovic, if they're both available, that's one of the greatest strengths of that team is their wing-back. So for us to get anything out of that game, it would have been much better to have our best wing-backs available. So, like I've already said it, but it's frustrating,
Alistair, we have some question on Twitter about Ciro Immobile, obviously. Zero confidence for Ciro Immobile at the moment. When the real Ciro will be back. What's your take about that? What's going on with Ciro? Because he scored with the national team. He scored twice. So I thought, on the confidence level, that should have helped him. So instead...
Yeah, but I don't know about you, but I felt like if the international break had ended after the Northern Ireland game, we would have seen a Ciro who's got that kind of liberation. He called the goal a liberation, didn't he? And it's kind of like a weight off his shoulders. But because it came after the Lithuania match where, yes, he scored, but he didn't have his best game and he missed quite a few chances. And he was visibly frustrated by that. Even after he scored, he was kind of shaking his head as he was going off the pitch at the end of the game. And I feel like it means so much to him playing for Italy and trying to prove people wrong that, I feel like his performance against Lithuania may have even knocked his performance back a bit, despite getting the penalty.
Alistair, we have some question about transfer market. Joe on Twitter is asking, how afraid are we that Caicedo will leave this summer? And thinking about all the points Caicedo gave us this season, which is right, we just said it, to a lot of late swing thanks to Caicedo. I don't know. Caicedo changed his agent. Now it's Materazzi, who we know it's a Lazio fan, has Stefan Radu, has good relationship with Tare. I think this could help. And this probably is a message from Caicedo saying, hey, I want to stay. So I think I'm quite optimistic on this. And then Alexander Mikkelsen asked us to talk about Pereira, which we did. And do you think after this performance, he's going to stay with Lazio? He's not helping the cause, right, Alistair?
No, I think we talked about this quite recently as well, but I can't see Lazio spending the kind of money that they're being asked to spend on him. I think the release clause has been set at 27 million, which is not going to be spent. The only possible reason Lazio would sign him is if they managed to massively reduce that fee. But even so, I think they would be, in my mind, wrong to spend that kind of money on that player when so many other parts of the team need improved. So I would find it very hard to believe that he's going to be around next season.
And before we wrap it up, Oliver is asking, he's saying that he's enjoying listening to our podcast. I wonder even when Alistair speaks, or only when I talk about Lazio. But he's asking if this summer we're going to do some special episode during the summer. For example, top 10 of underestimated, underappreciated Lazio players during the last 20 years. Alistair, this could be interesting, right?
Mauricio, Bastos, Gentiletti, Bishop, Luis Saha, Jibril Cisse, Helder Postiga. Yeah, we've got the list ready, I think.
The top best signing of Iglitare, that looked to me.
Well, yeah, no, I quite like the idea. I mean, we do stick around in the summer, don't we? We are still producing podcasts usually. I would say, just in case Oliver or any other listeners haven't found it, we did do a series of Lazio Icons podcasts around this time last year, so they'll be able to You can find those on the feed somewhere, about great Lazio players of the past, and on Patreon. And there's one on this Lazio Stadium project, which I think will still be probably just as up to date now as it was a year ago.
Yeah, the fear is could be still updated into a couple of years, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have to finish my Easter egg, so we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna wrap it here, and we're gonna be back after Verona Lazio, a very difficult match, very important for Lazio because yes, Milan, Juventus, and Roma didn't win, so we recover points out of these teams. But Atalanta is in an unbelievable winning streak. Napoli as well. I hope they could lose points. Instead, they are playing even better than before. So the Champions League race is still very tough for Lazio. And 10 match missing till the end of the season. And I don't want to say we have to win it all 10, but probably we have to get to the Champions League, Alistair.
Yeah, well, it's good to have got ahead of Roma at least. We're going to have to climb through another 2 teams still to get into the top 4. Obviously, it does seem pretty promising that Juventus are sliding, AC Milan are sliding, so it is tightening up that group. And I just hope we can get this game against Torino played at some point, which would help kind of give us a realistic idea of the league table as well. So, yeah, but I think that Lazio have to, obviously there's these 2 games coming up, Verona, Benevento, and then we've got Napoli and Milan. So it's a huge little period ahead.
Yeah. Thank you again, Alistair, for joining me. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Remember, you can find us on every podcast, wherever you hear your podcast, on YouTube. And if you love the podcast, you can support us on patreon.com/LazioLounge. Goodbye, everybody.